What would you do if the voice of God contradicted the counsel of the most respected prophet in your land? If a father in the faith spoke caution, and God thundered a mandate, which voice would you obey? This is the story of Bishop David Oyedepo and Pa S.G. Elton, a moment where prophetic voice, personal conviction, and divine calling collided. It's a story about honor and obedience, about a young man trembling before a spiritual giant, and the one decision that birthed a movement. Stay with me. By the end of this video you'll understand why some moments in history demand courage, and why the mandate sometimes must be obeyed even when every human voice says otherwise. Who was Pa Elton? To understand the tension we must meet the man at the center of it, Pa Sidney Granville Elton. Born in England, Pa Elton answered a missionary call and walked into Nigeria long before many modern Pentecostal networks existed. He settled in Elisha and became, for decades, one of the most respected prophetic voices on the Nigerian Christian landscape. He was present at pivotal moments in Nigerian revival history, a bridge between older revival streams and the new, vibrant Pentecostal movement that exploded across the country in the second half of the 20th century. Pa Elton hosted international revivalists, supported local evangelists financially and prophetically, and was known for a pastoral, prophetic wisdom that leaders flocked to for counsel. Because of that, when Pa Elton spoke, churches listened. Leaders, even the bold and the young, gave room to his word. His counsel carried weight not only because of years of faithful service, but because many believed his prophetic insight had been validated over generations of national spiritual harvest. In short, Pa Elton was not merely an advisor. He was an elder whose voice could shape decisions and alter destinies. That reputation is crucial to the story, because when such a man warns, even a man called by God will pause. He will ask, "Is this the Lord or a respected human concern?" Widapo's early ministry phase. Now meet the young man who stood before that prophetic giant, David Oyedepo. Long before the auditoriums, the campuses, or the international footprint, he was a young minister hungry for God, hungry for souls, and determined to obey what he believed God had shown him. He served in local contexts, he prayed, he taught, he sought the counsel of older men of God, because he respected lineage, spiritual covering, and the discipline of honor. That's important. Widapo's posture was not rebellious by temperament. He was a student of spiritual order. He went to elders, he listened, and he weighed counsel. And among those he sought was Pa Elton, an elder whose life and prophetic ministry had become, for many, a standard of spiritual credibility. Widapos did not approach Pa Elton lightly. He came to a man he admired, a man whose counsel could confirm or correct his path. So when Pa Elton spoke to him, his words mattered more than an ordinary opinion. They were a test of obedience and discernment the young minister could not ignore. The counsel from Pa Elton. And then the conversation happened. According to leaders who later recounted it, Pa Elton told David Oyedepo, with the weight of a father speaking to a son, that God had not called him to start his own church at that time. He advised, instead, that Widapo work within existing structures, to serve alongside others, to build influence through cooperation rather than by planting a new organization. Imagine that moment, a youthful minister burning with a sense of destiny hearing the prophetic counsel of an elder say, essentially, not yet. Wait. Work with what is already established. Why would Pa Elton say that? We can speculate responsibly. There are plausible, gracious reasons an elder of his stature might counsel caution. Timing concerns. Pa Elton may have seen the season as not yet ripe for a new structure, worried about the cost of a solo start in a volatile spiritual environment. Preservation of unity. He may have believed that spiritual movements in Nigeria were stronger when leaders cooperated, that splitting energy into new organizations could scatter, rather than consolidate, the harvest. Preparation and maturity. A new ministry requires systems, sustainability, and spiritual maturity to manage growth without pride or scandal. An elder can see the risks that a young leader, full of zeal, might miss. Local dynamics. There could have been specific local or relational issues Pa Elton knew of, things he thought might endanger such a start. Pa Elton's counsel was not delivered as a casual suggestion. It was pastoral and prophetic. It was meant to steer to caution. For any young leader, hearing that from Pa Elton would be a heavy cross to carry. So here is Widapo's dilemma in a single line. Honor the voice of a trusted spiritual father, or move when the mandate in his own spirit is burning like a fire. Both options carried cost. Both required courage. The mandate encounter. In May 1981, a young David Oyedepo experienced what he would later describe as an 18-hour spiritual marathon with God. It was no casual prayer meeting. According to his own testimony, it was as though heaven's doors opened directly into his heart. He emerged with a crystal-clear, unforgettable instruction. The hour has come to liberate the world from all oppression of the devil through the preaching of the word of faith, and I am sending you to undertake this task. This wasn't just a whisper, it was a commissioning. The words burned into his spirit. He said later that it was so vivid, so direct, and so urgent that ignoring it would feel like disobeying God to his face. For the rest of his life, this would be the foundation stone of everything he did. He wasn't chasing a personal dream, he was obeying a divine mandate. The tension, obedience versus honor. But there was a problem. In that same season, Pa Sidney Granville Elton, one of the most respected prophetic voices in Nigeria's Christian history, was a towering figure of influence and spiritual authority. Widapos had great respect for him. Elton had been a father to many revival leaders and a custodian of Nigeria's prophetic destiny. And yet, what Widapos carried in his spirit didn't line up with Elton's counsel. Honoring a spiritual elder was non-negotiable in Widapos's mind, but what happens when that honor seems to collide with obedience to God's voice? It was more than a theological puzzle. It was a deep, personal crisis. Disobeying Elton could mean burning a bridge with a man whose blessing meant so much. Obeying Elton could mean betraying the very reason God created him. Choosing God's voice. In the end, after days of prayer and soul-searching, Widapos reached a turning point. He came to a simple but uncompromising conclusion. God's voice is final authority. No elder, no prophet, no spiritual father, however anointed, could override a direct, unmistakable instruction from the throne of heaven. It was a dangerous choice for a young minister. It meant stepping out without the approval of a spiritual giant. But for Widapos, it was also a liberating one. He often says, "When you hear from God, you don't need further confirmation." This decision became a defining moment in his destiny, the moment he traded comfort for conviction. Birth of Living Faith Church. Armed with nothing but the mandate and unshakable faith, Widapos began in Kaduna, northern Nigeria. There was no cathedral, no massive choir, no television ministry, just a handful of believers meeting in small spaces with an enormous vision. Those early days weren't glamorous. There was opposition, suspicion, and even ridicule. Some called it overzealousness. Others dismissed it as youthful stubbornness. But as they prayed, preached, and acted on faith, small victories began to come. Testimonies of healing, provision, and transformed lives became signs that God's hand was truly on this work. Results that spoke louder than doubts. Fast forward a few years, and the fruit was undeniable. From Kaduna to Lagos to OTA, the Living Faith Church began to explode in growth. The Faith Tabernacle, at its dedication in 1999, held 50,000 worshippers, a Guinness World Record at the time. Covenant University became a hub for raising a new generation of leaders. And the annual Shiloh gatherings drew people from over 100 nations. Those who once doubted now had to admit, this was no human project. The results became the ultimate vindication, proof that the mandate really was from God. Lessons for today's believers. From this story, 3 key lessons stand out. Respect elders, but God's voice is the final authority. Honor is vital, but obedience to God must never be sacrificed on its altar. Divine instructions often defy human logic. If it always makes sense to everyone, it might not be faith. It takes courage to obey when it costs relationships. The road of destiny sometimes demands that you walk alone, at least for a season. This is not a license to rebel against spiritual fathers. Rather, it's a reminder that every servant answers ultimately to the master. And so, Bishop David Oyedepo's choice in the early 80s stands as a powerful example. When the mandate is clear, obedience to God is non-negotiable. It may mean facing misunderstanding, rejection, or even the loss of approval from people you deeply respect. But in the end, history will always prove that God's word stands above all. So here's the reflective question to leave you with. If God told you something that went against your mentor's advice, what would you do?